Welcome to the New Orleans Saints podcast, presented by Rouse's Markets. You'll hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and writers that cover the NFL daily. The New Orleans Saints podcast starts right now. Here's your host, Erin Summers.
Welcome into the New Orleans Saints podcast. I'm Erin Summers. The Saints are already on the West Coast as they prepare to take on the Seahawks Sunday, 3 o'clock Central. Head coach Kellen Moore and the team left Thursday after practice, Friday practicing at Washington Stadium, Husky Stadium, to get the feel of their first outdoor game, and then they're getting in some extra time to bond as a team. We're watching a few players on the injury report. Saints offensive lineman Dylan Radins has already been ruled out. Defensive end Chase Young and tackle Talia Fuaga have not practiced all week. Young is dealing with a calf injury and Fuaga a knee/back. Wide receiver Trey Palmer was out Thursday with a hamstring injury that popped up in practice on Wednesday. But good news is right tackle Trevor Penning has been back on the practice field after missing the first 2 games with a toe injury. They are continuing to monitor how he does. He has been limited in both of the practices so far this week. We'll see if he's able to go on Sunday. Again, that final list of inactives comes out an hour and a half before game time. Diving into today's episode, we're previewing the Seahawks with the Athletics' Mike Dugar, and then getting our perspective on things from the legendary running back Deuce McAllister. Seattle comes in 1-1 on the season, taking a 17-13 loss to the 49ers in Seattle week 1, and then they got a 31-17 win over the Steelers in Pittsburgh in week 2. It's been a slow start to the season for new quarterback Sam Darnold, but things really fell into place in the end of that Steelers game. Darnold led the Seahawks to more points in the second half of that game at 24 than he did through the first 6 quarters to open the season. So will Seattle build off of that second half performance, or will the Saints get out to a fast start and quiet the noise at Lumen Field? Let's get into it with Mike Dugar. Mike, thanks so much for joining us on the New Orleans Saints podcast. You have your feet on the ground there in Seattle. You know everything going on with that team. So you're the perfect person to break it down for us as we head into this matchup Sunday. There are still a lot of unknowns, I think, with both of these teams. But what can you tell us about the Seahawks through their first 2 games that stands out under Mike Macdonald and then the new OC and Clint Kubiak?
Yeah, well, first off, thank you for having me. And then with Mike Macdonald, I think that his defense is in a different place in his offense because there's less newness, as you kind of described. You know, his defensive staff did not change really this offseason, and Mike calls the defense. So they returned 10 of 11 starters, I believe, from last season's defense that finished as like a top 10 defense in scoring, despite a really shaky middle of the year there. So. And the one swap they basically made was replacing Draymond Jones, who's, I believe, in Nashville now, with DeMarcus Lawrence. So the one guy they didn't bring back, they upgraded on. So that defense came into the season thinking, okay, we're gonna wreck shop. You know, we're gonna hit the ground running. We don't need to learn anything new. We just need to fine tune a thing that isn't broken. And so the defense has been really good. You know, only give up 17 points against the 49ers, and really, I mean. Half of that is just Rick Willen not playing the ball well in the final 2 plays, but they otherwise played the run well, played the run really well against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Only gave up 17 points in that game as well. The Steelers only had 1 scoring drive in that game, and it was on a 21-yard scoring drive as well off of a Sam Darnold interception. So really held Aaron Rodgers and those guys in check. Again, stopped the run. I believe running backs are averaging just 3.4 yards a carry against the Seahawks. The Seahawks haven't allowed a rushing touchdown in the first couple of weeks. So the defense has been as advertised. They forced, I think, 4 interceptions in 2 games. So they're on it as expected. And then the offense is still figuring it out. And they only scored 13 points in week 1 and dropped 24 the very next week on the road against the Steelers defense that's still figuring itself out. But I think that what stands out about the offense is that newness and how they're trying to figure it out. It's like, okay, when do we use Ken Walker? When do we use Zach Charbonnet? When do we just feed the ball to Jackson Smith and Jigba because he's our wide receiver 1? But can we do that too much like they did in week 1 where Jackson had 13 targets and I don't believe anybody else had more than 3? And Jackson accounted for over 80% of the receiving yards in week 1. In week 2, Kupp had 90 yards to match Jackson's 103. So there's so many new pieces they're trying to implement into the offense, integrate, I guess, with the new quarterback. Sam's new to
Yeah.
me. It's only going to be my third game watching Sam Darnold, after watching Russ for all those years, and then Geno was pretty steady for several years. So that's new. Yeah, new receivers, new tight end room. There's a lot. They use a fullback now. I haven't seen that since the days of Marshawn Lynch and Michael Robinson playing together. So they're still trying to figure it out in an offense that looks like it. For better or worse, that is just the reality of their situation. I'm sure Brandon Staley is taking note of that this week as he prepares for them.
It's been interesting because a lot of the media members here have been asking everyone, does it help that you just had Clint Kubiak in the building? You know the offense that he likes to run, and everybody's downplaying it. They're like, there's so many crossovers in the NFL between coaching styles, familiarity with XYZ. Has it come up at all this week for the Seahawks?
A little bit, but I think that it's the same thing up here. There's only so much that familiarity does for you. Honestly, from the Saints' perspective, I'm not gonna speak for them, but I would imagine, from at least from Staley's perspective, it's far more beneficial to watch tape of the game they just played than anything from last season. When you're trying to scout Kubiak, because it's the same offense. Like
Mhm.
you just play the 49ers, that's the offense you're running up here in Seattle. So I think. Yeah, like people down there have been saying, there's only so many schemes you can run, right? There's only so many ways you're gonna run sell concepts and smash concepts and four verts, right? Everyone's just dressing it up and calling it something different. There's wide zone, there's mid zone, there's inside zone, there's power. There's only so many run schemes too. You're just dressing it up differently. Some teams use a fullback, some teams rely on 12 personnel, whatever. There's just everyone's dressing up the same plays and calling them something different. And then if you do have a defined scheme like the Seahawks run, well, the Seahawks aren't the only team that running the Shanahan scheme,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Shanahan's running it, and there's several other teams across the league that are running a version of this. Miami, as well, as one that comes to mind. Houston was last year. So I think the main thing for both teams, because I think it's going to be, now that there's 2 games of sample size, is to really hone in on that. Maybe in
Mhm.
week one, you got to rely on the pass. Maybe in even week two, you don't want to get too duped by a small sample size as you scout your opponent. But when you get, both teams have probably put up somewhere close to 100 plays on tape now, on
Yeah.
both sides of the ball, including special teams, which came up big last week. And the Seahawks went over the Steelers with the new kickoff rules. Both teams are probably looking at what happened in week one, what happened in week two, and how will that inform week three. I can say confidently that is what the Seahawks are doing for sure.
And when you look at the two games that the Seahawks played, it really seemed like this last quarter, 2 quarters against the Steelers, it all came together, outscoring them 24-3 in the second half there. So, what worked so well that I'm sure the Seahawks are going to try to replicate from that second half?
Yeah, I think they were down 14-7 at halftime in part because Sam Darnold threw 2 interceptions.
Yeah.
And like I said, that second interception led to points. And the Steelers also converted a 2-point conversion on that drive too. So it was an 8-point turnover, essentially, gave the other team a short field. And that's why they were down 14-7. I'm sure at halftime they were like, maybe not this explicitly, but if we just don't turn the ball over, they won't score, and they were right. They didn't turn it over. And like you said, they scored 24 points to Pittsburgh's 3. So I think that was part of it, just ball security, protecting
Yeah.
it. It's all about the ball. Every good coach will tell you that. So one of those 24 points came, 6 of those came when the Steelers return guy didn't know the rule. A kickoff, the ball hit him, and he just let it roll into the end zone. One of the Seahawks return man, actually, who's on kickoff coverage, he recovers it because he knew the rule, and there's 7 points right there. So I think that they just knew that the Seahawks, that is, protect the ball and we'll be fine. I think the run defense has been key to everything, as a lot of coaches will tell you. Stop the run so you can have fun, or earn the right to rush the passer. Defensive coordinators are really good with coming up with stuff that rhymes to motivate their guys. So salute to them. But I believe that the Steelers' 3 running backs combined for 69 yards on 20 carries. That's not going to get it done. You have to help out your quarterback, whether he's 42 years old or whatever Aaron Rodgers is, or he's 20 something years old like Spencer is. Like, you just have to help out your quarterback. Every
Mhm.
quarterback needs that. So they weren't able to help Aaron. So they weren't able to run the ball. Aaron threw 2 picks in the second half. Yeah, it just started to snowball a little bit for the Steelers, and then on offense, the Seahawks got their running game going. That's huge for them. Everything they want to do is built on running the ball. That's why you draft a fullback, in the fifth round to say you want to establish a physical presence. Ken Walker ran for 13 carries for 105 yards and a touchdown. I believe 79 of those yards came in the second half, including a 19-yard touchdown run on third and goal, which you really don't see.
Mm.
So I think that everything worked for them. Special teams, affecting the quarterback, running the ball. It was the perfect second half. And every second half won't be like that, but they want to bottle up pretty much all of those elements and make sure
Yeah,
they carry into all four quarters against New Orleans on Sunday.
for sure. I've been hearing poise in the noise from staff
Ah,
around here.
I
Yeah.
like that too.
Talking a lot about playing at Lumen Field. And it's the first outdoor game, first road game for the Saints this season. And the place gets very loud. So I think that's kind of what they're trying to hang their hat on, is making sure that they lock down on communication this week and have everything ready to go, because penalties have crept up on the Saints through the first two games. They've been talking about wanting to start fast to try to take the Seahawks crowd out of the game and kind of counteract that a little bit. I mean, is it really just that loud there?
Yeah, no, it gets pretty crazy. In 2017, Jimmy Graham scored a touchdown. Oh, Saints legend Jimmy
Yeah.
Graham scored a touchdown on the Houston Texans to win the game, and I could feel the press box shake. I
Mm.
could. I never felt anything like that. I was really early in covering the NFL at the time, but either way, now I've been to almost every stadium outside of like four, and I still have never felt anything like that, playoff games included. So that's pretty special. I guess one thing I add to that is probably applicable to the Saints as well is the Seahawks were really upset they didn't finish the game well in week one. They had the lead in the fourth quarter in their loud building and got walked down by Brock Purdy for a game-winning touchdown to Jake Tonges, and they're really upset about that because then they had the ball, went down to the red zone, the goal line, in fact, and then fumbled it away. Nick
Mm.
Bosa strip sack. And so they were really happy that, okay, every team says we're going to watch the film and learn from it, right? Learn from
Yeah.
it's very broad. But what they did learn is how to finish the game. They were much better in the fourth quarter than the Steelers were, and that helped them close it out. And I'm sure the Seahawks coaches are pretty good and pretty predictable. So I imagine they are showing, even though the Saints are 0-2, showing the tape and saying, look, this team had the ball against Arizona and was right there. This team had the ball against the Niners and was right, not as close, but at least had a chance to go win the game.
Mhm.
Don't get fooled thinking that we're gonna win in the first quarter. We got to finish this game, and that the crowd is gonna help with that. It's gonna be very hard for the Saints to finish if Spencer can't hear, and
Yeah.
tell his center the calls or whatever. So I'm sure that's a conversation this week up here as well.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier about all the new additions on the offensive side. What is the balance between the two running backs, adding Cooper Kupp in as well? It seems like there are a lot of options.
Yeah, I think they want to make it so you can't key in on one guy, and a lot of offenses say that, but how you dress it up, is determines how serious you are about executing that. I think the Niners, where they run their system, has traditionally been, at least in the last few years with Kyle Shanahan, a really good example. What the Seahawks want to do, they basically put five guys on the field and say all five of these guys can run block, all five of these guys can catch. So pick your poison, and that includes their fullback juice check. That include McCaffrey, and then when they had Debo and Ayuk and Kittle, that's
Mm.
their five, and those five can basically line up anywhere. They can hand it. They could hand it to Debo. They could hand it to Christian. They could hand it to Kyle. They could throw it to all those
Yeah.
guys I mentioned. Throw it to George. Throw screens to pretty much all those guys. Throw vertical to at least half of those guys. So it's this idea that like these five are gonna live in this world and you have to stop all five, including our fullback, which is what made them pretty hard to stop. So the Seahawks are trying to live in that same world where you have either Ken Walker or Zach Charbonnet, but then you also have fullback Robbie Oots, rookie out of Alabama. You have Jackson Smith and Jigba, Cooper Kupp, and then your tight end, either AJ Barner or second round rookie Elijah Arroyo. And they're saying, let's get the ball to everybody.
Mm.
Let's make sure everybody can do a little bit of something. And they don't have the same like gadget players, I would say, that like Debo was for the Niners. But for instance, AJ Barner, one of their tight ends, already has two carries on tush pushes. Like he's their tush push guy because he's 6'5", like 260. So that's something you have to account for. That's different. So the
Mhm.
goal is, in a perfect world, get the ball to everybody. And that makes you harder to stop. Changes, it helps you formationally. Like it's a scheme that makes sense because once you put a fullback on the field, you have established a level of throwback football
Yeah.
that the other defense has to account for. In this world where the linebackers are 230 pounds and everyone's using five DBs all the time, that don't work when the other team has a guy whose job is to just hit your dudes. That's it. He don't even want the ball. But then if that dude can also line up outside the numbers, and now you're playing empty at a, with that, it's a schematic advantage that they haven't fully maximized yet, probably because it's early. But
Mhm.
what the Saints just saw, even with Mac Jones in week two, is it's very similar. Like they want to. I think Kyle got hurt in that game, but before he got hurt, they were trying to use everybody to help out Mac, and the Seahawks are going to do the same thing with Sam Darnold.
Speaking of health, where is the team at? I saw there are a lot of names on the injury report, both sides, for the initial one on Wednesday. And I know we'll see how things progress going into this weekend, but there any names of people coming back or that will be out?
Yeah, Zach Charbonnet popped up on the injury report with a foot issue. That's something to keep in mind because they want to use another team as an example, they will kind of want to have what Detroit has from the running back perspective. It's
Hmm.
Jameer and it's David Montgomery, a 1-2 punch legitimately, and they want Ken and Zach to be that. If Zach's not there, do they just force feed Ken? Not force feed, but do they lean on Ken? How much do they give undrafted second year guy George Halani some run? So Zach's issue, I don't know the extent of it, but that could be a guy that they're missing, which is important because like I said, he's very much part of what they want to be offensively. Zach's a big guy, good contact balance. So guys just kind of fall right off of him, very similar to they do to Alvin. And then on defense, yeah, a lot of guys pop up. Julian Love when they're starting safeties. I think it's a foot injury for him, a lower extremity of some sort. Devin Witherspoon's has an MCL contusion. Nicky McWard, their second round rookie safety, has an ankle sprain that he suffered in week one on the first series. So they're banged up in the secondary.
Hmm.
So those are all names to keep in mind. They could not have any of those guys. I think they'll at least have Julian. So if they do, it'll be very similar to the lineup they put out there in Pittsburgh. But that's something we've also learned about Mike McDonald and a little bit this year and last year as well, is the messaging of like what happens when guys have to come up. I wrote a little bit about this week on the Athletic. Like he doesn't even call the practice squad the practice squad. He calls it the ready squad.
Mm.
Because he wants those guys to, the philosophy of no, you need to be ready because you might play. He tells to everybody on the team, this is not a 53-man roster. We're rolling 70 deep, including the 16-man practice squad, and they get an exemption because they have an overseas guy. So it's like we're 70 players because any of you guys could play. One of those
Hmm.
interceptions that Rodgers threw was to Darian Kendrick in his first game as a Seahawk. They claimed him off waivers from the Rams, right? Like he had to be ready. So even if they don't have these names I'm mentioning, like we're seeing that Mike McDonald is like we're seeing his philosophy kind of grow. How just the little things he does, like changing the name of the practice squad to ready squad,
Yeah.
impacts guys so that when you are thrown in there, it's not, oh dang, we got to play such and such today. Hope he makes it through. It's such and such has been working because he's been ready. I'm
Right.
excited to see how he performs, and it helps guys. One of the
Yeah.
guys that's helped is cornerback Josh Jones, who's playing lights out right now. He was a practice squad guy till week 7 last year. Now he's like their best cover corner, in a secondary with 3 Pro Bowlers. He's playing like the best guy. But I think that's a direct reflection of McDonald's kind of new culture up here.
Yeah, no, I think it makes a lot of sense mentally to be framing it that way, even for the player themselves to like continually be referenced as that. Defensively, again, seems like a strong point of this team, especially up front. I mean, the pressure leading the league right now in quarterback pressures, being able to stop the run game. Like, is the line just so good? Is it the scheme? Like, what's the key? Where's there a crack that the Saints can break into?
There's not a lot of cracks in the scheme. I do think the one thing that gets any team that has a really top heavy front is just depth. And coaches will tell you like get that. That's why at least when I watch the Saints, you could see Kellen kind of really wants when he gets that first down, it's like okay, pick up the pace,
Yeah.
let's roll. And that's important because if you convert on third down, chances are the other team needs to sub it's big boys, right? Because that's a long run, from the middle of the field to the sideline. But if you just go, now you're tired. Or if you do sub, now you got backup DTs in, things like that, backup edge rushers. But the starting guys for Seattle are really good. Leonard Williams is a beast. Jaron Reed is a veteran who's a beast. Byron Murphy, the second, he was a first round pick last year. He's a beast. And more than the scheme itself, all those guys are very good. And can line up everywhere. But more than the scheme itself, is the players bought into it? Because there is so much of telling the guys, hey, look, for about 4 plays on this drive, you might just have to just set the edge, right? That's it. Just set the edge, do your job, and maybe one of our linebackers is going to make the play, or maybe the safety's supposed to make the play, depending on what the run is. But that fifth play might be like if we get them to 3rd and 7, they're going to slide the protection to Leo and Leonard Williams. Hey guys, you're going to get a one-on-one. Go win. Go beat the guard. Go beat the tackle. And if you do and you get a sack, there you go. Believe in the scheme. And
Hmm.
I think that there's a selflessness aspect to it, or selfless aspect to it that guys have really accepted. It's like, okay, I may have to take on this double team on first down. Shoot, I may have to take another one, or maybe I gotta just meet the fullback in the B gap, for a couple plays here. But if I do my job, the next time they try to run this toss sweep, it's on me to go. That's my time to shoot my gun, so to speak. So
Hmm.
I think all those guys have bought into that, which is why you see so many good players, but not a lot of statistics. The Seahawks, like you mentioned, are one of the best pressure teams in the league right now, but none of their edge guys have a sack. 2 of their edge guys don't even have quarterback hits.
Hmm.
But so what's going on? It's everyone's just kind of biding their time, waiting their turn till it's their time to go. I think that's a really cool part of it. It's hard to get guys, I'm sure, to buy into it, particularly guys who are on expiring contracts, like the Seahawks have a few of, but
Right.
they have. And that's
Yeah.
how it works. Guys are willing to take on a double team, just blow up a gap just to help someone else, knowing that soon it will be their turn to make a play. That's really cool. And I think the way Mike has gotten guys to buy into that is in the secondary as well, but it's really showing up front on a down and down basis in the run game.
Yeah. I mean, everybody says that they want to win ultimately, but if you are working on an expiring contract, sacks definitely help you out when you're looking for more money.
Yeah, exactly. Or if you're on the road somewhere close to your hometown, you got family there,
Yeah.
like road games are a big deal for Seattle. They don't have a team full of guys from Seattle, right? Or even the
Right.
Pacific Northwest.
Hmm.
It's guys from the South, it's guys from Texas. So, they're going to go down to Atlanta this year, but the guys from the East Coast had people at the Pittsburgh game, because that's the closest place for a lot of guys is families,
Hmm.
so it's sometimes hard. You got 20 people up there wearing custom jerseys and you just taking on double teams for 30 plays.
Yeah.
But the guys are willing to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're willing to do the dirty work because they trust that their time will come, not just that their job is to do the dirty work. And I think that's a really cool, and it shows up. It really shows up on Sundays and on film.
Hmm. First impressions in talking to people, what are they looking at as far as the Saints team goes?
Yeah, I think fans, there's two perspectives. Fans are like we should blow these guys out, right? Because it's a young team, it's a new coordinator, or excuse me, new coach, new coaching staff, and that just comes with growing pains. This is their first road game of this new regime. I know
Hmm.
Spencer's probably played on the road before, but just the idea of let's have our home field really be the 12th man today. Like
Hmm.
really be, the thing that makes us so much better. I don't, and that's just the fans. I think the players have been around long enough to know it does not matter. Then they're going to watch the film and see, like I mentioned, 2 games that came down to the wire, one of which Spencer pretty much throws the game tying touchdown, just gets popped out by Buda Baker, right? So it's
Right.
not even like it was a bad performance, in a loss there. So the thought from the players is let's take these guys seriously. They're all NFL players, but let's try to rattle Spencer, no pun intended, and
Hmm.
then we can get loose. I think that's the thought. Whereas the fans are just like the fans, as you know, are really caught up in like who the quarterback is, and that determines how good the whole team is. Like we're
Yeah.
playing Mahomes this week, we're playing Josh
Right.
Allen. Well,
Yeah.
no, the defense has 11 other guys who might be very good as well, and you need to account for them. So I get why fans think that way, and fantasy football has corrupted all our minds in that way. But the players know, hey, if we don't do our job, Carl Granderson will hurt our quarterback. If we don't play our double teams right in the blocking, Demario Davis will have a bazillion tackles, or whatever. They just know that, So I think that the players are in for another fight. They're in for it. They know that we have to finish. games.
Mhm.
That's going to be the key. And I think the last part is there uh there are not that many guys on this team who have played Alvin Kamara in Seattle. But any guys who has played him on defense knows if you don't bring your chin strap, he will run by you or run through you or run over you. And they've seen that. I've seen some games up here where he's had like 8 broken tackles in one day. I think he did it in 2021 on Monday Night Football. So hopefully Mike McDonald pulls out that tape too to remind guys like
Yeah.
he's not built like Derrick Henry, but he is pound for pound just as elusive. So yeah, those are some of the focuses this week. Also, in terms and just getting a win at home. The Seahawks are 3-7 at home under Mike McDonald. That's just
Hmm.
I don't care how many games you win on the road. That's just inexcusable. And Mike knows that. His boss knows that. His players know that. So that's going to be big for them this week as well.
Yeah. I think we're in for a good one. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a little bit different for us, a later game on the West Coast there. So we're going to be able to watch a few of the early games for a little while before we get into ours for once, which it'll be fun. I appreciate the time so much, breaking everything down for us. Excellent job. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Have a good rest of the week and enjoy the game.
Oh yeah, well, thank you. You too.
We're joined now by former Saints running back Deuce McAllister, who is also an analyst on the Saints radio broadcast, so definitely has a good perspective of things here. Going into this weekend, the Saints are facing the Seattle Seahawks. They're 1-1 coming off a road victory, but they are back home at Lumen Stadium. How tough of an environment is that really to play in?
It's going to be tough, and I think, one of the biggest things that the Saints team really offensively and defensively is they've got to do a great job of communication. And so whether it's hand signals, whether it's, speaking actually to the quarterback and, giving him a couple verbal cues so he understands and knows. And even if you have to go old school, running the play in with the receiver or someone to kind of give him, hey, number one, number two, because that's really the 12th man. How this Seattle defense, it feeds off of that impact. And if they can be able to beat you out of their snap or out of their stance and you're a little late, it doesn't help you from whether it's the offensive line, whether it's the receivers, because now you're kind of reacting late. And the strength really for that defense is a 3-4 base defense. But the strength of that defense is the defensive line. And so they can really get after you. And so that's probably the biggest challenge. They have some talented players, but that will be the biggest challenge, putting that plan together, being able to be on the same page where there's no issues with, I don't want to call it just crowd noise because there's some other things that come into play, but crowd noise can't affect you to the point where you can't operate your system.
Yeah, through 2 weeks of play, the Saints have had 20 penalties. That's been something that has been an issue that they're still trying to attack. For them, especially in that environment, what has to be the main focus to be on the same page from the start of the game?
Well, I think the biggest thing is, can you play fast? I mean, that's always going to be a question mark for any team. And then having your first game, true road game, being up there in Seattle will be a challenge. And so when you talk about playing fast, it's giving them some plays, not just one play, but some plays where they can go to and they know everybody knows exactly what we're doing from a formation standpoint, from a play standpoint, from a solid count standpoint, and or even based off the movement of the guard. That's normally who gives the cue to the quarterback, as far as looking at the center, whether it's a head nod, whether it's two claps, whatever it may be. They will have a formula to be able to say, hey, look, this is how we want to operate. The Saints team offensively, they've probably done better with tempo. And so being able to go to the line of scrimmage immediately, you get a couple calls. You'll have to give the quarterback a little bit more, but you have to be able to give him enough where he can go out there and be successful. And the other thing is you don't want to feel hurried as a unit as well, because that's where that defense will really be able to feed off of, the crowd, the environment, et cetera.
The Saints were able to really get their ground game going, especially with Alvin Kamara's 99 yards in this last game. But Seattle limited Pittsburgh to just 56 yards from their 3 backs in the last game. What do the Saints need to do to get that run game going? Because that can help quarterback Spencer Rattler get going as well.
Well, that's one of his best friends. And we need to go and petition the stat individual who shaved Alvin that 1 yard, because originally when the game ended, it was 100 yards, and then they go back, they change it to 99, and so we'll still say 100 until, we're going to lobby for that to be changed. But he really had a good game, and the offensive line up front, they gave not only Alvin the run lanes, but they gave Spencer Rattler the time to be able to throw the football, and we kind of know what happened as far as the ending of that game. You've got to be able to take your run game on the road, and so the offensive line, they'll be familiar with the look, because it's a lot of what they play against on a daily basis as far as the 3-4 or at least 3-down look that you'll get from Seattle. There's some different principles from that look, and so it's just making sure everybody is on the same page. The call will come from Eric, and then making sure he can be able to talk to his guys up front, and they understand and know this is who we're blocking, this is who you have. We want to handle this look this way, and to be able to lock those guys up, because if you can get Alvin to the second and third level, eventually he's going to be able to pop one. He's going to break one, but it takes securing that front line first.
The Seahawks defense has had 2 interceptions apiece in the first 2 games. So not only are they stout up front, there's some tough players in that backfield too.
Yeah, on the back end, they've got some talent back there, and they're potentially getting some more back, guys that haven't been available in the first couple of games. Potentially, we'll see how the week unfolds on whether some of those guys come back. But, I mean, it starts with the pressure up front. They don't have to really blitz a lot. I mean, when you look at it, I think it's less than 15%, maybe 20% of the plays, because they can get pressure generated with that front 3 or 4. And whenever that happens, that means I can flood the zones and, maybe bracket a receiver or 2 that normally doesn't happen. And so you've played against some pretty good quarterbacks as well. You talk about Brock Purdy and obviously Aaron Rodgers. Those are pretty good quarterbacks. But if they're able to limit your run game, then now I can drop more people into coverage. And, that's really what has happened the last couple of weeks. And so it'll be a challenge. It'll be a challenge for the Saints. They've only had a couple of turnovers so far early in this year. They need to limit those on the road, and then you have to be able to, like you talked about, the 20 penalties. You had 13 the first one, 7 the last game. If you can limit those again, then I think you put yourself in position to be successful.
Looking at what the Seahawks do well offensively, they're led by quarterback Sam Darnold. Ken Walker went over 100 yards in this past game on the ground as well. What are the biggest threats there that the Saints have to be aware of?
Well, it's the run game, and then being able to control the boot. I mean, and so they're going to be able to take some shots. They like to take some shots. Sam Darnold's an aggressive quarterback. He's in a new system, and so the guys should be somewhat familiar with Kubiak defensively, but it'll be different. I mean, but some of the looks or the action, there's some familiar, they'll be familiar with that. But at the end of the day, you've got to be able to stop Walker, and it's kind of a 2-headed monster with their running game. But Walker, I think he had 4 plus 10-yard runs in the last game alone, and the Saints didn't allow a lot of that. The first 2 weeks, you had one, I think, last week, and there was a scramble, and then the previous week there was a big run that Arizona was able to hit you on. But if they can limit that run game, then now that forces kind of the Seahawks to have to lean on the passing game a little bit more. And so I think the Saints can win that, but it's going to take a group effort. It won't be just one guy being able to slow that run game down.
Don't forget to tune in to the Saints pregame show this Sunday at 2:05. You can catch Scott Shanley and myself breaking down the upcoming game. Stan Verrett has an exclusive interview with ESPN's Mina Kimes, and I talked to head coach Kellen Moore about the matchup. That's all at NewOrleansSaints.com an hour before kick. Don't miss it. Enjoy the weekend and go Saints.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Saints podcast presented by Rouse's Markets. Join us 3 times per week on NewOrleansSaints.com, the Saints mobile app, or you can download the podcast on iTunes. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Saints podcast, presented by Rouse's Markets.